Dave Chappelle recently hosted Saturday Night Live for the fourth time in his career, and in his monologue he spoke his mind on just about every current event taking place in America right now. He addressed the Los Angeles fires, the indictment of P. Diddy, and of course the elephant in the room, Donald Trump's re-election as the 47th President of the United States, in what is now the longest monologue in Saturday Night Live history at 17 minutes. The last time Dave did Saturday Night Live was back on November 22nd, 2022, right around the time that Kanye West had gone on InfoWars and praised the German mustache man. So for Dave to return right around the time Trump returns to the White House is a very interesting predicament with unique timing. Nonetheless, a lot of people tuned in to see how Dave would make light of the current events in America. Before we dive into Dave's most recent monologue, I want to make a quick point. I'm probably going to catch a little bit of flack for saying this, but Dave's first two monologues on Saturday Night Live really didn't impress me that much as a fan of his. I thought they were fine, but Dave is one of my favorite comedians of all time, so I had a lot higher expectations and was hoping for a lot more jokes throughout the monologues. At times, Dave Chappelle can really flip the switch and sling jokes better than just about any other working comedian today, but at other times it seems like he focuses a lot more on talking points and preaching, similar to the late great George Carlin, and some of the changes that were made later in his career when it came to his act on stage. That being said though, I understand that comedians change with time, and Dave is not in the same situation he was when he made the special Killing Them Softly back in 2000, so I still support Dave and tune in anytime I see him on Saturday Night Live. His last appearance back in 2022 I actually really enjoyed though, because all the jokes about Kanye and Kyrie Irving were just fucking brilliant. I'll be using this appearance to compare his recent monologue to later on. To begin with, Dave comes out and shares the conversation he had with Lorne Michaels where he was invited to do the show. Apparently Dave was initially offered the first episode after the 2024 election, and he staunchly rejected the offer and requested the closest possible date to January 6th. The delivery for these first few jokes is pretty solid, and it did catch me off guard. Then he gets into the LA fires material, and he really talks about how a lot of his friends, including his co-star for Robin Hood Men in Tights, lost their homes in the fire. Then he makes this joke about reading the comments online.
And it broke my heart. And then I go on the internet, and I watch these fire videos, and I read the comment sections, and everyone's like, yeah, it serves these celebrities right. I hope the house is burned down. And you see that? That right there? That's why I hate poor people. Because they can't see past their own pain.
I thought this joke was fine, but it ended up being probably the weakest part of the monologue for me. Dave Chappelle didn't go full Tom Segura and really shit on poor people and everything about them, but he made this fun little jab, and it made me push a little bit of extra air out my nose as a poor person myself. Then he continues on about the LA fires and talks about the conspiracy theories surrounding the inception of the fire, and he talks about the arsonists and how it could be true, but a lot of other factors like the winds, the dryness, and a lot of other stuff really concocted the perfect environment for a disaster like this to happen. Then he slips in a few punchlines that I really enjoyed.
And I'm sure there were some arsonists, but there were a lot of elements that came together to make this fire the catastrophe that it was. The winds were 100 miles an hour. LA was dry as a bone in the levees, and there was just too many factors. If you were a rational thinking person, you have to at least consider the possibility that God hates these people. Sodomites. And that's not true because West Hollywood was unscathed. Because how can you burn what is already flaming?
Fucking hysterical. I have a love-hate relationship with Los Angeles, California, so I really enjoyed these jokes from Dave. Then he talks a little bit longer about the fires before he segues into talking a little bit about Donald Trump. He talks about the claims that Trump made about how Haitians were eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Now call me an idiot, but I actually did not do enough research to know whether or not Haitian immigrants were truly appropriating Chinese culture. However, I really liked the way that Dave made that bit come full circle when at the end he said he wasn't sure what the meat was that he was eating in a Haitian restaurant located in Springfield, Ohio. Then he talks about being famous and how it's not fun for him anymore, and uses this to segue into his next bit about Puff Daddy and all the trouble he's in. These jokes were some of my favorites from the entire monologue.
And they'd be like, well, how all these people you know was at the freak off, but you's the only one that wasn't at the freak off. And I thought about it for a minute. I said, oh my God, I'm ugly. That's a tough way to find that out. Can you imagine if you were me reading the newspaper and found out everyone in Hollywood had an orgy behind your back? Like none of y'all called me?
I really enjoyed this bit, and I thought this angle of being famous but not being invited makes you ugly was great. This is a premise that is completely original, and I was really impressed with how he framed it this way. Then he continues on about how maybe he isn't ugly and that maybe he just has snitch energy, which this one was pretty great too. So far, I'm really enjoying the monologue from Dave, and the material about Puffy has been my favorite so far. Then Dave begins to close the special talking once again about Donald Trump returning to the presidency and also Jimmy Carter's death. He walks off with a cool story about Jimmy Carter going to Palestine with little to no security. There's not really any jokes in his closing chunk, but rather a sincere wish for Trump and people to be better, which is all well and good, but we all know that people are not going to be any nicer to each other over the next 4 years. This isn't me cherry picking one side or the other either. There's assholes on both sides, but it seems like all I hear about nowadays is the loud, arrogant assholes on both sides who think they can speak promptly for the people who sit in the middle. Anyway, back to the monologue. Overall, I actually really liked this monologue, but I still think his previous one is his best one. He wasn't so preachy to the point where he stopped being funny, but he still had a touch of his real beliefs and values sprinkled throughout the set, which I think is just fine and makes Dave very unique. I have enjoyed his last two monologues a lot more than his first two. Full disclosure, I'm very biased because the Kanye jokes in the last monologue were my favorite. I didn't notice until the making of this video that the last monologue Dave had back in 2022 was actually taken off Saturday Night Live's YouTube channel. And why was it taken down, you ask? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but I really don't know. As mentioned, I am biased because ever since I was a kid, I always enjoyed Kanye's music, and to see him spiral in the way that he has in the past few years has been pretty depressing to say the least. Then to hear Dave Chappelle make all the great jokes he did about Kanye, Kyrie Irving, and the meta behind the conspiracy theory of Jews controlling the world just really made me laugh my ass off about the whole thing. This ability Dave has channeled throughout his career was particularly prominent when Dave gave his 2022 monologue, and I think he channeled it for his most recent monologue as well. I think what makes Dave particularly unique here is his relationship to Kanye, and for the most recent monologue you could point to his relationship with celebrities in Hollywood as well. However, his perspective that he has as someone who is in these circles is really interesting to hear, and seeing him make jokes about that is really where I think Dave produces some of his most interesting work to date. I don't know if he'll ever make a tighter comedy special than Killing Them Softly, but as I said in my top 10 video where I ranked Dave as the 5th greatest comedian of all time, I think Dave gets a pass here. George Carlin had an enormous body of work before he really moved away from setup punchline jokes and started preaching bitterly with a lot less jokes than he had in his early career as a comedian. Some people say later in George's career he was less a comedian and more of a social commentator, and I'd agree with that. I would also say that Dave has made a similar transformation to George, despite, in my opinion, still being incredibly funny, having a lot more jokes than George did at this point in his career. Sure, he has a bit more preachiness in some of these shorter specials he has released, like Unforgiven and 846, but this isn't his entire new body of work, just parts of it. As long as, for the most part, Dave continues being funny and continues to channel this perspective he has into his comedy, no matter what the topic is, I, as well as many others, will continue to listen to whatever Dave decides to do next. I really enjoyed his newest SNL monologue, and I could see myself watching it again and again, just like his monologue from 2022. But anyway, what do you guys think? Did you like Dave's newest SNL monologue, or did you not like it? Have you even seen it yet? Do you still find yourself watching Dave Chappelle's new comedy specials, or are you no longer a fan? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope the more relaxed narration style is easy for you guys to listen to. If you made it this far and you want to continue to support me, please check out the second YouTube channel, Nate Roscoe RLP, where I talk about real-world issues in a fun and goofy way. I'd really appreciate it if you could click the link below to sub to my other channel. If not, it's all good. I don't really care that much. But thanks again for all the likes and for subscribing to the channel. That's all I got for you guys today. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.